Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague here. It is Friday, September 18th, 46 days before the election, and we are here with our panel of all-star journalists. Delaney Smith from The Independent, Josh Molina, who writes for Newshawk. Thanks, guys, for taking the time this morning. So let's start with the pandemic, the story that will never end. Delaney, you wrote in your piece this week that our cases are way down. We're allegedly expanding testing, but we're still stuck in the purple sector by the state. What's going on?
Yeah, so for the last several weeks to like a month, we have been on this pretty sharp decline in cases, hospitalizations. But then we kind of just started to make this little plateau. Now it went down and now we're plateauing. And we are just inches above the red zone, which is that.
Red is better than purple, right?
Right. And that's, yeah. So Governor Newsom recently changed the metric system for measuring how well counties are doing with their COVID control. And so now it's like a color-coded thing. Purple is the top tier. It has the most restrictions on businesses, and that's where Santa Barbara County is at. And we are quite literally at like just a few differences or
So
a few.
it's what? It's like eight cases per 100,000 or something, or that's what we have, or that's what we need to get to?
No, we need to get to 7 or less per 100,000. And we right now are at like 8.3 or something. So we're, I think, or 8.4, I don't quite remember. But right around there, it's so very close. And then we have just kind of plateaued right there. And so a lot of business owners are getting really frustrated because that means there is no indoor operations still until you get into the red zone. It means that as far as nursing homes go, there's people spending the last moments of their life with 0 visitors allowed still. Because we're in the purple zone. So it really will make a huge difference if we can get over to the other side of that line. And so the county is encouraging people to go get tested at these 3 testing sites. It's free. There's plenty of open spots. And the more people who are getting
Josh, according to your publisher, who went on a great rant this morning about this, you can't get a test in Goleta, right?
Or Goleta's full. You can't get an appointment. So it goes counter to come get tested, everybody. Yeah. So
you can also get tested by your provider. If you have health insurance, you can get tested by your provider as well. And that might be true at the Goleta location. There's 2 other locations, but they are highly encouraging that. But then there's this other kind of angle that the county hasn't really spoken about publicly as much. Definitely some supervisors have talked about this offline, which is that the outbreak at the jail is kind of a make or break factor here. If that outbreak could be quashed, then we would be in the red zone. It's that
the public defender sued the sheriff about this?
Yeah, well, she's not suing the sheriff, but she's taking him to court because she wants the court to order there was actually 11 different orders, and ultimately they would like the court to order that they lower the jail population. But yeah, they would like to the court to order the jail to do specific orders that would reduce the outbreak, because these inmates are alleging that they are being placed 4 people to a 3-person room with half of them being tested positive for COVID, the other half.
And that's a big factor in keeping us from getting from 8 to 7, correct?
Yeah, because those inmates there's still people in our county. And if they were being properly quarantined, then this wouldn't be an issue. And we would actually have a lower count and be able to go into the red, and businesses could further reopen.
Here's the only thing I don't understand. And, I totally get the businesses being concerned and saying, these numbers are so small, this is ridiculous. But part of the reason that they're small and they're going down is because we're staying at home, we're wearing masks, we're doing all this stuff. So it's like, oh, let's open it up. And then it's kind of, it's a pandemic. So I'm still not sure that people kind of get the meta of what's going on with this thing. But whatever.
Well, Jerry, I mean, what they'll tell you, is, and this is not my perspective, but what they'll tell you is that we can't run our businesses here on the South Coast when the majority of the cases are in the jail in Santa Maria, Lombok, North County. And so we're penalized because we're like this fat county. So if we were a smaller county, this would be entirely different. That's what they would say. But yes, it's like a never ending loop on the logic.
Yeah.
And it's just, there's no way to really have an articulate conversation about it because it always comes back to
and Josh,
what your perspective is.
You'll remember that when you and I first met in 2002, one of the first series we did at the paper was the county split and the difference in values and economics and everything else. But
yeah, you had Nora Wallace and Starshine back to back on the front page. I don't know why. I mean, Starshine's great, but you had her arguing for one half of the county split against Nora, and that was interesting. But yes, I remember that.
It didn't happen.
You were still burying me as like, the peon in the newsroom at that
Oh,
era.
Okay. All right.
You hadn't decided to get behind me yet.
I'm glad you're not bitter about it. Okay. Here we go. All right. So the three of us wasted collectively 6 hours of our lives last night on a Zoom call watching Lanny Ebenstein, community activist and educator, moderate a Zoom forum for the seven candidates for the Santa Barbara School Board, which was strange. I mean, it was strange doing it that way, but the whole thing was kind of strange, wasn't it, Josh? I mean, Delaney's got the only other shot at these people altogether, and I just felt like we didn't get to the heart of the issue on a lot of stuff last night.
Well, I'm sure that Delaney's going to do an amazing job. She doesn't have anything to worry about, quite frankly, measuring herself against this forum, because this forum was really disorganized. It was odd. It was goofy. It was a Zoom meeting. So typically we take these things seriously. We take the candidates seriously. They're going to talk about the issues. We're going to watch. The journalists are going to cover it. We're going to write about it. We inform people, and we're a part of the democratic process. In this virtual setting, you had 117 people on a Zoom.
127 was the top.
Oh, yeah. Okay, it went up. And some of them are anonymous, and some of them are showing their faces. We don't need to see people sort of chilling out in their beds during the forum. Like, we just don't need to see it. And we don't need to see elected officials who are not, part of this also.
And all of the apparatchiks from the Democratic Party.
We just need the 7 candidates. That's all we want. Okay, so that's number 1. And then 2, they have this chat going, and the chat is just like the worst of the worst, or the most angry people on social media, and they're just like lobbing insults at Brian Campbell.
That was the best part of the
Baywatch Brian. Did you see that one?
Baywatch Brian. Yeah, there were a lot of people getting on Brian Campbell.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like, okay, are we going to like treat this like it's some big child like circus? I mean, that was what it felt like. And then okay, let's get over that. Okay. Maybe it'll be a good forum.
And we're talking about the Coalition for Neighborhood Schools was the sponsoring.
Yeah, and Lanny's a data scientist, economics dude. So I don't understand why. Well, this wasn't his best day in terms of presenting himself or his questions. He's like brilliant dude, but this was not his best performance. And so it felt like the questions were shaped at the incumbents on issues that would favor the conservative challenger. So that's number 1. If the forum's not fair, it's hard to really give it the credibility that it deserves. There was a question from the audience, I guess, about COVID, but I would think, whatever, one of the first questions should be related to COVID.
Right.
Like, that should be kind of a lead thing, since that's never happened before and we're doing it. And so it was just kind of a mess. And then you had some candidates attacking each other and others defending. It devalued the whole thing, which is the Santa Barbara Unified School District, you could argue, is more important than the Santa Barbara City Council, because these are our kids, these are families, it's a wider voter base, and we care about our kids more than anything in the world. So let's treat it seriously. And the first question was, should every kid walk to school?
Every elementary kid be able to walk to school. And Delaney, as you know, there's context for that, because I as I understand it, you know, they're upset about the closure of 3 elementary schools many years ago.
Yeah, in the 70s.
And that was all sort of connected to desegregation efforts and so on, but there wasn't a lot of context. But anyway, your 7-part feature with Q&As with all the candidates I see is now up on the website, so people get a glimpse at them. So we've got the 3 incumbents, Laura Capps, Wendy Sims Moten, and Jackie Reed, unelected incumbents. And then we've got Elrod McLearn and Brian Campbell, who are kind of the conservatives, and Moni DeWitt, who is the literacy person, and Virginia Alvarez, who many people feel may be the best qualified in this area.
She killed it last night.
Did you say, who do you think?
I gotta jump in here and say that the Virginia Alvarez branding on the media is like amazing, because there's this perception that she's the one. And it's interesting because it's like, what are we voting on that on? Because she's been in the Montecito district?
I think based on her practical experience, don't you?
Did you listen to her answers last night? Okay, I wish I actually finished my story before this show. Like, because what my story was focused around is the questions, although I understand that is the aim of the Coalition for Neighborhood Schools, is to have a school downtown where kids can walk to school. The questions all being related to that were really weird and irrelevant to current issues.
And with 7 people, it took like an hour to get through.
Yeah, it was really odd. But what mattered was, how did these 7 candidates answer these irrelevant questions and then still tie in really relevant issues and facts about their campaign somehow and still answer the question. And Virginia did that. That's why I kind of felt like she killed it, because even if she got asked about walking to school, somehow her response had to do with data and, you know, which minorities are able to live in neighborhoods.
Yeah, they were very.
Like, that's how she transformed her answer, instead of, I mean, who doesn't want their kid to walk to school? That's such a random thing to ask.
I mean, Josh, I get what you're saying is, you know, are we all getting spun about Virginia? But, you know, I think it's sort of analogous to me to the Kate Ford situation 2 years ago, where, you know, she didn't get the party endorsement, but her life experience, her professional experience, you know, she just knows the stuff. She sort of has mastery of the material. And that's what I feel about, you know, Virginia, that she's worked with a lot of budgets. She's just, you know, they just reopened a school, Cold Spring School. So she's, you know, she's kind of on that. But who did you think did well?
Well, I thought Laura killed it. I thought she did a really good job. I thought she really shined in this environment where she's talking about stuff she's super knowledgeable about in the district. And she was appropriately defensive of Adelante and criticisms of dual language immersion. And she was confident, and she was, I think, very clear in her answers. So I thought she did a good job. I thought Virginia did a fine job as well. I just don't necessarily yet, maybe I will by election night, see the incredible like buzz around her yet.
Have you met her?
As being earned. I've not interviewed her in person, but I don't really see that yet. I think Wendy did a great job. I think she's sort of on it, and that 4th spot is kind of between Jackie and Virginia, and so we'll sort of see where that is. But I'm not really impressed with Jackie either. So I think like 2 of them are shining, and the other 2, it's sort of a.
Was it Jackie that had the mathematical Zumba class going on, or who I forget who?
That was Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie was on Zumba, and Moni was on Kung Fu. So there was some of that. But But I have to say, and I don't know that he's got the resources to win, but I thought Elrod did a good job because he was really on message. He was like, hey, I'm here to represent the parents. You guys are letting the inmates run the asylum. The students are in charge. The parents need to have, he hammered that. And he was the only one who like sort of seemed to get the dynamic that there's 3 incumbents and you got to take them on. And he was, respectful, but also consistently critical of their performance, particularly, on the test scores and the achievement gap and so on. So
but he also demonstrated, Jerry, that he doesn't really understand how, and this is again why Virginia seems stronger to me. He demonstrates that he doesn't know how stuff works. Like he doesn't know how the budget works when he started talking about, oh, there's too many people in admin, so we should just cut them. And then all of that money we can use to go put into a school. Like that's not how it works. Like those kinds of statements he kind of frequently throws out there that
right. He's not grounded.
It's impossible. And you don't actually know how the basics of a school district works.
All right, let's talk.
Can I weigh in there a second?
Yeah, sure.
It's hard to take him too seriously when he seems to be repeating conservative talking points without the specifics, and there's also no passion. I could sit here
Very flat affect.
Yeah, I mean, I could sit here and bash journalists that I don't like all day. Okay, that looks really bad. But if I talk about like what I've done, that's way more engaging. And so like, I feel like,
why don't we bash our colleagues for a while? Let's do that.
We'll do that when the Zoom's over. But what I mean is like, this is Santa Barbara. This is not any city USA where you can do a cookie cutter, like you don't know what you're doing. You have to have substance. You have to talk about yourself, and you have to make people believe in you, not that, oh, they're bad. And if they're going to do that anyway, they're going to vote for Brian Campbell because Brian Campbell.
I was going to say, what did you think of Campbell? I thought he kind of faded into the woodwork. He may have been too engaged in the chat war going on. I don't know. What do you think, Delaney? What do you think of Brian?
Of Brian?
Yeah.
I mean, he came off all right. I mean,
it feels to me like he's trying to be the conservative, but he doesn't want to be.
It feels like he's trying to be the conservative, but it also feels like he's, for example, his melting pot statement says it over and over and over again, and it kind of just, he's trying to pad his conservativeness to also kind of appeal to a different base, and it doesn't work.
All right, let's talk about the Goleta School Board a little. We got 2 seats. One, the incumbent chair, Cholet. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Cholet's and she's definitely got it.
So and then Susan Epstein, after many years, is leaving the board. So there's an open seat, and there's 5 people running for that. Patricia Max Rorty has gotten the party endorsement. A lot of people seem to like Vicky Ben-Yakov, and then you have kind of 3 conservatives, Devani Beckler, Carolyn, our friend Carolyn, and Greg Hamill. What's your take on that race?
I wouldn't pin and Devany is how you pronounce her name. I wouldn't pin her as a conservative.
No?
I'm actually wondering why you are, but
because if you go to the Westmont education website.
She is a Christian, yes. But I mean, so is Max Rorty. She's Christian, and she's the founder of the Transgender Advocacy Network. I mean, and she's
yeah. I mean, I have not talked to any of these people, so I'm just, kind of, I'll take her out of there on your recommendation.
Yeah, she's really not. She's just kind of, she's like a very, she used to be a teacher for 7 years. She's a stay-at-home mom of 4 now. And she doesn't have this. The one thing that I found really interesting interviewing all of the Goleta candidates actually was it's so different than Santa Barbara Unified, and that in Goleta, most people are actually pretty happy with the district right now. They want to be on the board because they want to contribute to their community. They don't have an axe to grind. They're not, trying to get elected because they're pissed off about a decision that was made. Most of these people, Devaney included, are like, I have zero complaints about the district and I'm really happy with my kids there. I just want to be more involved. That kind of seems to be the thing. And so that's kind of who she is. Another thing about her personality I thought was interesting is that she is a foster parent. They've had 2 placements so far, and she's getting ready to do a 3rd one after her campaign is over, whether she wins or loses. And I thought that was interesting about her because it kind of speaks to her personality and the kind of person
So
she
who
is.
do you think, Josh, do you have enough sense of it? Who do you think the front runners are there?
Well, it's a 3-person race today. It's hard, Cholet is the incumbent. She's kind of like Laura. Like, people like her. She hasn't done
Take it to
anything.
the bank.
She's probably gonna be number 1. And then we have Max and Vicky, and that's really the issue of Max is the Democratic Party endorsed candidate. Vicky is not. And Vicky, though, is the one who's got all this experience.
Yeah, she was a big Sonos executive or something, huh?
Yeah, but I mean, she's got kids in the district, and she's been involved, and she speaks, and she's engaged, and she talks, and she's done things. Whereas the perception is that Max is sort of like handpicked by maybe some of the Democratic
by loose, right?
Again, Jerry, I'm speaking macro here. That may have been handpicked and want to run, and there's some tension there about like, this isn't fair. I thought I was going to run. I was going to be the endorsement. Oh, this one's coming out now. And so it's really between those 3. That's not to discredit.
That's the Gail, Luce, Kathy, Molly kind of nexus there that's behind Max, huh?
Yeah, Max ticks a lot of the boxes of the Democratic Party platform. And also Caroline and Greg are conservatives. And the thing about conservatives is, like, if you want one of them to win, because the registration is so imbalanced in favor of Democrats, you need one conservative to run, just one, and have everybody vote for that person. So it's just, there's too many.
Hasn't Greg? Haven't we seen Greg at the Greg Hamill at the Santa Barbara board complaining about just communities?
Yes.
Yeah, Greg's has kids, or did have kids in the Santa Barbara and Goleta district, and he has complained about reverse discrimination against his children, and so he doesn't like just communities. Greg is a very kind man. He's very nice. Money matters. You have to raise money. You've got to overcome the system. I just get really frustrated with people who think they're going to win on their ideas.
Yeah.
It's not about ideas. It's not even about qualifications.
Well, I think particularly this year, because of the pandemic and Zoom and all this kind of stuff, it's going to be all about organization, which is to say the mailers and figuring out who's going to vote and getting them a ballot.
And we have fewer people in Isla Vista. So one weird thing here is typically the Democrats rely on the Isla Vista people to supplement the vote, and so they'll hit hard. So a bunch of IV kids will actually get somebody elected, in the Santa Barbara Unified School District or something. And so with fewer people here because of COVID, that could be an issue. Probably not enough to change anything, but it's definitely something that the people behind the scenes are concerned about.
All right, Delaney, when's your so you're going to do the same thing with the Goleta people, the Q&A that you did with the Santa Barbara candidates?
Yes, a few of them have been rolled out. I don't have control over when these are getting published, but I've interviewed every candidate weeks ago.
So at some point soon, hopefully before the ballots go out the week of October 7th, I think.
Yes.
That'll be in the paper. All right. Hey, Josh, so let's go back to the Black Lives Matter situation and so on. One of the demands that they made in the city councils, which city council accepted, is to do this sort of police resource, police review, whatever, get some citizens involved in it. And so there was a hearing, the finance committee had a hearing about it this week, and your lead said that they, quote, seemingly blundered. And after reading your story, I wondered why you put the word seemingly in there.
I need to be objective, Jerry.
They really they totally screwed the pooch. What happened?
Well, it's another thing where this thing showed up on the agenda and members of Healing Justice Santa Barbara felt as though they were not given a heads up, that they were not included in these conversations. And so it's another example of, it's two things, and I'll give government a little bit of credit here. Government being tone deaf to the issue, which is you can't just do everything the way you always normally do it, because you've got a really highly sensitive community cultural issue here that you need to be aware of. So you need to bring them in, okay? On the other hand, people have to understand government's not used to working like that. These are people who are in government for a reason, and they're just used to and being done with things. And so it's a communication mess up. They presented to the city council, the staff pay $100,000 to a consultant to come in and figure out how to rework the police budget and move out the non-essential services, to hire a police officer internal to partner with county behavioral wellness so that they can have a cop and a mental health worker go and respond to situations, plainclothes cops, so that it would be a way to de-escalate the situation. None of this has gone through Healing Justice in any kind of participatory way. Now, you could argue, why should it? That's not how government works. Government does the research and then they present. And that would be government's perspective, of course. But in the real world, if you know you're being criticized, you know, and a lot of the public is against you, you might want to think about having some meetings to talk about these things. It just makes more sense. Collaboration matters when you're dealing with people who have been ignored for a long time.
And you know what surprised me is Megan Harmon, your hero, who embraced this issue, really, you know, tried to own this particular issue, and is usually pretty politically deft about the kind of things, just seem to get blindsided, huh?
Why are you singling Megan Harmon out?
Because she tried to make it her issue. She's really been the most high profile on the police resource piece of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could think you could argue the council too was sort of left out of some of these things. This was staff driven. I don't know the specifics of what any of the council members knew or didn't know going in there, but I think it's a thing where Healing Justice wants the request for proposals to be somebody who's dealt with discrimination and racism and communities of color.
And now that's not a qualification that they put in.
It's not explicitly there. It's a generic RFP. And so that's the whole idea, is you're doing this again. And then it just goes to the fact that the theory that the city's trying to like ride this out because it was super hot in May and June, and now here we are in September. And,
that's a good point.
Hoping they'll move away or they'll get focused on something else and maybe they won't have to deal with it. Well, I think the city needs to realize that these people care. It's not necessarily a thing that's just one moment in time. They're going to continue to push in order to make change. So the city's going to have to reshuffle a little bit here if they want to be responsive and not be accused of shutting people out.
All right, Delaney, what are you working on?
By the end of the day, I will have the details about Fair Education dropping their lawsuit against the district.
Okay, all right. And then Josh, you had the last thing real quick. There's that National Transportation Safety Board report on the Conception on the dive boat disaster. What was the bottom line on that? Did they figure out the cause?
There was no explicit cause stated in that report. However, the interviews with the galley workers suggested that it may have been related to the charging was going on with all the devices. One person charged their phone and there was a spark. There were photos in the report of all of the cameras and equipment that was being charged at once. And so the implication was that there was an electrical issue that may have played a part in this because so many people were charging. It was clear that everyone was asleep. You're supposed to have somebody
asleep.
The crew was asleep. You're supposed to have one member of the crew awake at all times. And so that's something that came out of it. It's a long report. There's many different details in that, but the gist of it is this sort of harrowing account of how they tried to go down to the bottom and rescue. They couldn't open anything. They couldn't see. There was smoke. They jumped off. They got a smaller boat. They tried to come back and do it. They couldn't. Eventually they went and got help. And, by that time it was too late, but I just can imagine it being just like incredibly, just the most frightening thing imaginable.
All right. Delaney, when's your forum with the Santa Barbara candidates? September 26th, is it?
24th is for Santa
24th.
Barbara
Okay,
and
so-
30th is for Goleta.
All right. So next week then, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta be ready for that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about it next week. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Josh Molina, Delaney Smith, for taking the time on a Friday morning to check in and let us know what's going on. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
See ya.